Hey, good morning. So, today we are walking my dogs. It's the first time I'm posting to YouTube Direct instead of through Facebook. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, other than that, oh, I got my hat. See? Yay. Yeah, today I just want to talk about something pretty simple. The impending housing crisis, which I think no one is really paying attention to. So, right now, the record amount of defaults on late rent is huge. I rent a house in Florida. I own a home in Texas, but I rent a house in Florida, and I'm even late on my rent because my receivables from my company are late, and I had no choice but to force my landlord into skipping a payment. Of course, I'm getting caught up. I'm very blessed with that. However, it got me thinking about the billions of dollars that are being lost, that'll be forcing the property owners, who are the landlords, to miss mortgages, to miss property tax payments. A report came out in the Wall Street Journal, I believe, and it said that the majority of people that are receiving these $1,200 checks, and the majority of the people that have received the unemployment, the expanded unemployment, are not using their money. The majority are not using that money to pay their rent. Rather, there is this implied belief that rents are forgiven or should be forgiven by the government, or that rent forgiveness will be coming. Well, that's not true. That's not even a maybe true. It's just not true. After all, the largest sector of our economy is small business. And small businesses, including direct landlords, meaning not some mega corporation that happens to own rental properties, but that husband and wife that put their money together to buy a broken down home that they then fixed to put a tenant in, or the two friends from college who decided to get into the rental business and they bought their first little small condo to rent out to college kids on campus. That is the heart of our rental landscape. Not apartments, not townhomes. And it is going to cut deep. There is a mutual covenant that transcends any lease agreement that you might have. There's a covenant between landlord and tenant, which right now, the fabric of which is being stressed beyond belief. As a tenant, we're supposed to have beyond our lease a moral obligation, a survival obligation to cover ourselves for our shelter. Shelter isn't given to us, it's something that we must pursue. And when we enter into a rental agreement, that rent should be a priority to be paid. Up there with food and clothing. When it's not, when it's ignored, when you act entitled, hey, I need to have shelter, I need to have a roof over my head, I'm not going to pay this because I got to feed my kids, you are violating a moral covenant. When the choice to tighten your belt comes, food and shelter are equal, and the decision that you make must be made in tandem with your landlord. Because guess what? Your landlord has a mortgage to pay, and if he doesn't pay the mortgage, guess what happens to the house that you're living in? Yeah, it gets foreclosed on by the bank, and both of you lose. So that's something. And then for landlords, a lot of them for a long time, another statistic that came out, have historically undermaintained their property. New landlords especially do not understand what it takes to properly maintain a rental property to meet the law, the letter of the law, as well as to provide a robust and healthy living experience for your tenant. It's a business like anything else, and the tenants are your customers. And building a relationship with your customer, you only have one customer per unit. It's super easy versus other businesses. Unfortunately, most landlords don't understand the importance of customer retention and customer appreciation and customer service. And therefore, when times of adversity hit, like now, their hands are tied. They don't have reserves built up. They don't have properties that are robust enough that if they have to evict, they can immediately get another tenant in. It's crazy. It's going to create an epidemic. It's already affecting the mortgage industry, and it's already affecting the real estate markets. In some of our highest markets, Chicago, LA, New York, we're seeing 3 to 8 percentage points dropping off of the ask price for homes listed for sale. Now, the demand for shelter in these areas hasn't changed. People still need shelter. Their ability to pay has changed, but historically, that's a 2.2% change impact. When the economic strength or weakness of the buying class changes, it typically only impacts the curve, the market price curve, by 2 to 2.5%. Right now, we have a 6 to 8% change. So how is that? It's because, partially, it's because the people that are selling properties realize that the buyers who would normally buy the property to flip it or buy it to live in it, that whole class of buying population has changed. First, let's talk about the buyers who buy to flip a property. They're all but disappearing. They've already recognized that the mortgage curve has changed. With mortgage rates at 2.66, and yet the amount of mortgage applications has not increased, we are below 3% on mortgage rates. And yet the amount of applications has not increased. What does that tell you? And the amount of approvals for pending applications has gone down. This data you can verify independently in lots of different databases. So then, what's going on? Well, quite frankly, people that could buy homes, fix them up and flip them, are finding that now they're becoming landlords because the ability to flip the house isn't there. It then pushes people into thinking of the landlord business, and they're now realizing, because of this pandemic, that being a landlord isn't that great because there aren't that many good tenants out there. And by good, I'm not talking about a moral good. I'm just talking about a fiscally healthy client. Typically, a tenant who is renting is judged on their credit, their current income, and whether or not they've ever bucked on a lease before. Those are the three primary factors. Currently, the state of the economy plays a bigger role than the individual tenant. We have, 32 million people unemployed right now? And of those 32 million unemployed, and another 50 to 100 million underemployed right now, today. How many of them are paying the rents? What does that do to the rental market? Because of that, it makes it very scary to buy a home because you can't flip it. And unless you're prepared to be a landlord, it makes it very scary to become a landlord. What does that mean? That means that the housing market itself is about to get crushed. And that affects all of us. When the amount of homes being built diminishes, it ripples through the economy. New homes. When the amount of existing homes aren't turning over at a certain rate, that means going from one owner to another, it sends shockwaves through the economy. When homes suddenly die, what does that mean? That means they're foreclosed upon, and now there's nobody living in it. It's just a dead asset. It no longer pays taxes. It no longer contributes to the stores around. We as a people need to start to recognize this underlying contract that we have with each other, with our landlords, with our tenants. I don't have any solutions other than proper allocations of the funds that you do have. Everybody wants to eat, but people can diet. And everybody wants to go without hunger pains. But a little bit of hunger pains isn't going to kill you. Now, you do need your medicine. If you don't have your medicine, you can't live. But you don't need a new pair of shoes or a new iPhone. It's just hard. Because I know majority of the tenants out there believe that they're doing right. And any attempt to encourage alternative behavior is seen as condescending. Just like what I just said. Oh, you don't need a new iPhone. You don't need a new pair of shoes. That's highly condescending to people that are already stressed. But you need to do something. You cannot just sit idly by and allow the very fabric of our economy, which is the housing market, to erode. It's already changing, and the changes are permanent. But if it erodes and takes a hit, as is being projected, that'll have lasting implication on retail stores. I mean, heck, retail stores now, certain brands are just going away forever. Everybody's walked through a mall, and most malls in America have a Victoria's Secret. Well, now 250 stores are permanently being closed. Back when I was a kid, there was something called Orange Julius. All of a sudden, Orange Julius was merged, I think, with Dairy Queen or something. But most Orange Julius has left the market. You don't notice it as much when it's one store or one brand. But right now, hundreds of brands are leaving the market, never to open again. Across the continent. That is going to have a lasting impact. Those jobs aren't coming back. The product they sold is not coming back. When stores close, the supply of their merchandise reduces. And it's very elegant. It's to meet predictive demand. So if the community isn't there to buy, they're not going to provide the supply because they can't get the price to hit the right margin point to justify all of their stores. And we're seeing that happen. And we are more concerned with shelter in place or the cost of opening the economy than the very real destruction in the fabric of our economy. So, while you drink your morning coffee, if you're so blessed, or walking your dogs, if you're so blessed, take a moment to think about your neighbors, get to know your neighbors, think about yourself and your own situation. Because this issue can't be solved by tenant and landlord alone. It is going to take both government intervention of some sort, hopefully, where the government will choose to allocate some of their taxes to prop up land owners and property owners, hopefully in the form of rent forgiveness. I don't know, and I don't know how they would do it, but hopefully that will come. But more importantly, you and me, Look to the left and the right and across the street. Get to know your neighbors, and if they're in need, I pray that the Lord moves in your heart for you to give and help. Go in these days and get to know and care about your brother and your neighbor. Get to know their financial situation. If you can do something about it, consider deeply if you should, and do it. I'm not talking about giving to a church. I'm not talking about charity to some unknown organization. I'm talking about feeding your neighbor. Invite your neighbor over, regardless of whether or not they're hurting. Share the food that you do have with your neighbor and get to know them. Encourage them to do the same. Form relationships. Because the community contract, the covenant we have with each other as fellow citizens in a community, is stronger than even that covenant between landlord and tenant. And when you build relationship, you end up loving your neighbors, and they end up loving you, and that creates a safety net. It allows for the openness of confession, where you can talk to each other about whether you're strong or weak, where your fears are, what's going on. And in the counsel of your neighbors and the counsel of each other, you'll also find, hopefully, resource. Hey, I have extra eggs. Borrow some of my eggs for breakfast tomorrow. I don't need them. Okay, well, now you just saved $3, and maybe that $3 is all you need to go and put it aside for something else, your property tax payment, your water bill. Who knows? Learn to budget. Learn to tighten your belts if you haven't already. Government assistance will be insufficient to help us. But you and me and our neighbors, together in community, we have the ability to affect change, to provide a common defense and a common support structure to each other and for each other. And it will not happen if we approach each other with our own hand out. We need to approach our neighbors with the ability to give them a hand up and a welcome. So my challenge for you today is, do you know your neighbors? Do you know their names? Do you know their stories? How many kids they have? What they're going through? And if not, for no other reason than you're human. You're made in the image of God. You're loved first so you could love others. What are you doing? Go knock on a door and say hello. For each one of us that says hello to a neighbor, we've gained not only a friend, but we've strengthened and buttressed the very safety net that's supposed to save us all. The government, after all, is nothing more than a representation of the people, and we are the people. And if it's representing a fictitious net over fictitious people, then we've lost. We need to make the fabric real and strong, and it starts by getting to know your neighbor, caring for them, building bonds of relationship. So please, that's my prayer for today. We're going to have some economic challenges come our way, and we need to prepare. You might not see it, you might not feel it now, but it's coming, and it'll affect all, the 1%, the 99%, the married, the single, the old, the young. Money and the lack thereof for any resource is indiscriminate. When the economy itself changes, it doesn't just affect the poor, it affects the poor the first, but then it erodes wealth from those who have resources, and there's nothing they can do to hold it. It falls through like grains of sand through a sieve, watching it go through in an hourglass, creating desperation. The only way to fix it is for all of us, rich and poor alike, to get outside and meet each other. And this is not a give up quarantine, give up shelter in place. This is not a part of that conversation. And when I say get out to know your neighbor, I'm speaking metaphorically right now. Obviously, right now, in this very moment, in certain places in the country, you're not even allowed outside of your door, let alone to cross the street to go talk to your neighbor. But my point is, make it a desire, be prepared, and start to make a change. Be the change that you want to see. I stole that from someone, I think Gandhi. Anyway, I love you. I hope you have a good day, and God be with you. Peace.